I'm guessing that many of you have already packed Christmas away because culturally here in the United States, Christmas ends on midnight, December 25th. But liturgically minded folks continue with the 12 days of Christmas that ends on the Feast of Epiphany, which was yesterday, January 6th, with a remembrance of the Magi's visit to the Christ child. So, where are we? Where does that leave us? Is Christmas over and packed away? Some veins of the Christian church have understood and celebrated Epiphany more than others, not seeing it as this, end day that ramps us down from the holiday festivities into everyday life, but that it is actually Christmas unfolding before us, and its blessed meaning taking shape and hold in our lives. In Christian tradition, Epiphany has been understood and evidenced by 3 events. The Magi's visit, as we've just mentioned, widening the scope of redemption to all peoples. The baptism of Jesus as he steps into the waters to identify with us as sinners and begins his public ministry with the anointing of the Spirit and the Father's blessing. And when Jesus performs his first miracle of changing water into wine at the wedding at Cana, records of miracles begun. So you see, it is not out of place to celebrate the Feast of the Epiphany with the baptism of the Lord. It fits liturgically. It makes sense. And also, Pastor Doug earlier was running around looking for a jar for water. So who knows what might happen next. But like the Magi planning their route to the Christ child, the preacher looks at these significant events, these beautiful manifestations from God, these abundantly rich passages, and that pastor or preacher must determine a route to take that doesn't risk getting lost on the journey or put fellow travelers to sleep with a long and winding ride. Adding to the weight of this Sunday is the fact that it's our first gathering of 2024. So on Facebook and Instagram and all sorts of media messages are out there wishing you a Happy New Year, with the emphasis on new as we look forward to what the year holds. While it's true that the church calendar proclaimed the new year on Advent one Sunday, we can't deny that our lives center around more than one calendar, and we're either welcomed into or perhaps confronted by 2024 and all it holds for us. Undoubtedly, this mix of church and secular calendar has influenced how I approached the topic of Epiphany and what I hope we take away from it. Epiphany is not a dead-end stop to the Advent Christmas cycle. It is a culmination for us. It's a culmination for sure, but one that points in the way forward. There is more. There's more to come. There's more to explore, and there's more to discover. Whenever we think of more, we typically envision adding something on. The typical New Year's resolutions. In addition to walking the dog, I'm going to jog 3 miles every morning before breakfast. For information and self-improvement, I'll read 1 intellectually challenging book a week. Beyond Facebook and messages and emailing friends, I'm going to write a handwritten letter to each family member on their birthday. The stuff of dreams, right? More can feel exhausting and self-defeating. But listen to these narratives of Epiphany, where there's a sudden revelation or insight, a gift from God bursting into our world and undeniably recognized. Those things did not come from adding on more as we conceive more, but from a purposeful redirection. And it is that I find striking about these passages in particular and about the broader theme of Epiphany this year. What pull or desire so captured the Magi that they would leave everything familiar and venture forward into the unknown? seemingly across deserts, and I can tell you the desert starts looking very much the same. It's just sand as far as the eye can see. What called to Jesus at that exact moment to receive the baptism of John and begin his public ministry? And as I pondered these questions, I'm left with one for today. What do these narratives mean for us? Not just as stories from the past, but how do we live into them? We're given these narratives without very much detail, and we're people who crave detail. And so we tend to fill in the gaps. Look at your nativity sets or pictures of the nativity if you haven't already packed them away. There are 3 wise men, right? But we only know that there were 3 gifts. We have no idea how many wise men there were. Perhaps one carried 2 gifts, and then maybe there were only 2 wise men. Or maybe there were 4 containers of gold, each being carried by someone, and then that would make 6 wise men. The mathematical factorials are just endless there. And do your sets have crowns on their heads representing royalty? We do not know if they were kings or not. And though they're often portrayed as one with a Far Eastern face, one African, and one Middle Eastern skin-toned man, we honestly have no idea what they looked like or what diversity was represented. But I find it beautiful, though, that they're pictured that way, because it speaks to the point of the narrative. This child is for us all, for all people. And the baptism narrative in Mark is sparse in detail, as is everything in Mark. Mark communicates with brevity. God help him. Here we do not see the conversation between Jesus and John when John tries to dissuade Jesus from being baptized by him. And we don't even see Jesus waiting in line, as another gospel writer tells us, a picture of humility. Mark briefly writes that Jesus came out to John to be baptized, was baptized, and when he came up out of the water, he saw the heavens open and the Spirit descend on him as a dove, and the Father's voice declaring him a beloved Son and pleasing God greatly. But of all the missing information, the thing that I'm most curious about is this. What was the disposition of their hearts that pulled their focus away from everything else and moved them forward in God's plan? Because that would be a word for us here today. That would be a word for a new year, how to learn to put our attention, our full attention on God and God's plan for our particular lives. You heard me tell the children I love to travel. It's because I always learn something of myself and something about God in each new place that I visit. And that's because my attention is so heightened. I know I'm going to be in that place for a short period of time, so my eyes are open and my ears are open, and I'm taking in all around me. How can we foster that same sort of attentiveness in our everyday lives when the ordinary seems to rule the day? Epiphanies are manifestations of God and given by God, yet they require something from us too. A piqued curiosity, a burning desire to know more of God, a willingness to make that desire the focal point of our lives. It's what Ignatius of Loyola called spiritual freedom, where God is so the center of all we are that the lesser disordered attachments of our lives are seen for what they truly are, lesser things, lesser pursuits. Think of the word disorder. Have you ever thought of that word before? Disorder occurs when things are not rightly ordered. Proper order puts God first and in the center of our lives, God as the pursuit of all we are. And that timing that Jesus felt, the timing of when new ways should end and he should step into new ways ordained by God, how did he feel that exact time? He was poised for an epiphany. And I think we should be poised for epiphanies too. And maybe you're thinking, poised for epiphanies, I'm just trying to get through this day, this difficult season of life with enough struggles of its own. And as I wrote out the prayer requests for this week, I was reminded again of so many among us and our circles of loved ones who are going through really difficult days. And one thought came to me as a comfort. Being led by a star as the wise ones were means setting your course at night in the darkness. With the exception of our sun, because of its close proximity to Earth, stars do not shine in the day to be seen. The Magi followed what they were shown in the darkness, and that is so often our way forward too. But I'm not saying that makes for an easy path. I would prefer to revel in the epiphanies that we read about today, to imagine the wise ones finally at that destination and the intense joy of finding the child who was born for their peoples too. What could they do except prostrate themselves in worship and offer their gifts? Or I'd like to be there and see what Jesus saw and hear what Jesus heard at his baptism, where that portal between heaven and earth ripped open and God's spirit and voice fell upon him in assurance of his belovedness and purpose. I would like to hear that belovedness and purpose for my own life, and I'd like to hear it for your lives too. But we remember those are not the full stories. In their quest for the Christ child, the wise men unwittingly tipped off Herod, who in a jealous rampage orders innocent children slaughtered. And Jesus, moving forward to his ordained role, must leave the scene of heaven's open portal and do face-to-face battle with Satan to stand firm in God's plan. But even against the evil, we find that when the course is set upon God and God's will is at the center, that God prevails in and through us. It's our new year. It's one new year. There's one perfect quest and only one. There's one ordered life, and that is a life with Christ at the center. Can we set the course by God's leading, even if we have to set it in the darkness? Even then, if we have to prevail against evil, can we keep Christ at the center and not have our lives or plans disordered by our own fears or wants or wishes or whatever disorders them? Can we? That's the question that I wonder about this Epiphany, this baptism of the Lord Sunday. Blessed Epiphany to you. Blessed New Year to you.